One of the hardest things you can ever do in life is figuring out your history and really zoning in on what is your trauma. Now, I truly believe everyone is born through some trauma, no matter if you're the richest person in the world with the richest family or you're the poorest of the poor. There is some inherited trauma that comes through our family. And this is a conversation that's not really that popular. A lot of people try to avoid it. Personally, that's the wrong way to go. Here in America, if you're watching from a different country, we have a lot of challenges, and I'm sure a lot of other countries have challenges. I was listening to the news the other day, and they were discussing Japan and how this lockdown really affected Japan. Now, Japan has been known for people committing suicide or dying on the job due to their depression. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, South Korea has the highest suicide rate in the entire world. There's something up here. I start the conversation there. I don't mean to go into a dark place, but this is something that we have to figure out if we want to prevent the darkness from consuming us as we get older. We can only push things to the side as much as possible before it really begins to consume us as we get older. I'm sure you've heard about the man who's 45 and has a midlife crisis, buys a really fancy car, cheats on his wife, disappoints his family, and all these other things. You've heard stories like that, or the woman who realizes she's 50 years old, has an amazing career, but decided not to have children because of her career, and now she wants a family, but it is too late. There are many, many different stories I can get into. Those are just two minimal examples compared to the vast majority of stories that there may be out there. But I want to discuss the story of generational trauma, because if this is something that we do not look into and do the inner work on, we will not be as successful as we could be. Now, first, let's define what success is. Now, I like to define success as looking at your life holistically and how you're doing. What brings you joy? What challenges do you look to face every day? Because success doesn't mean that your life is perfect, that you live in some paradise. But success is more of how you feel when you wake up in the morning, I think. We think of success as being a monetary thing, of you having a home, and it's very external. But what about the internal, right? So I like to look at success when someone tells me I believe that I'm successful. Now, I may not be in the financial space that I wish to be, but I see success in terms of like how I feel when I wake up in the morning, my relationships, my body, and how I actually feel with the nutrition that I provide my body with, and the movement that I do every day. What does success look like? Now, I want to start with that because as I'm going to talk about where the family comes in, this generational trauma, a lot of it was inspired by this book. It didn't start with you. How Inherited Family Trauma Shapes Who We Are and How to End the Cycle by Mark Wolynn. And I'm not done with the book yet. I have like 50 pages to go, but I had to make a video, and obviously I will add a link if you are looking to purchase it. Now, I can tell you the summary of the book, but the most important thing about this book is that it's kind of like a workbook. You will do exercises in this book to find your family trauma. Now, I like to talk about when I started learning about my family trauma was about 3 years ago, and I started it off with going to Ancestry.com and getting my DNA results on where my family comes from. Now, I'll put it up on the screen for you here. What you're looking at is that I'm almost 30% Portuguese. I'm Puerto Rican by race. Both my parents are Puerto Rican, from New York. And when you look at the history of Puerto Rico, and I've been there and taken tours to learn about the history of my people, we definitely have European, Spaniard folks come with slaves from Portugal, from Africa, and all these things. Obviously, all these races intermingled together to formulate the Puerto Rican that I am today. But it's interesting when you look at the whole entire list on what that looks like. The Native American, Taino Indians that lived in Puerto Rico before these settlers came in and kind of took it over. That's where it started. But obviously that began to bring up questions, and ask my mother about my grandparents, and ask my father certain questions about his history and his relationship with his parents, and my grandparents on that end. And I won't get too deep into it because that is a private matter for family, but there's definitely tons of pains on both sides, right? A lot of pain there. So obviously, when it comes to looking at my life and my future generation and the child that I wish to have one day, I have to think about, what am I looking to heal so that my child is not burdened with this inherited trauma? Because trauma can be inherited. And literally, there's a whole chapter on that. I believe it's called something around the lines of 3 generations of trauma or something, that it follows the family bloodline because it's encoded in your DNA. Sounds like some magical BS, but there is actually science behind it, and he has tons of stories of people he's worked with who, once they solve their trauma riddle, they experience bliss, and they experience a release and a lightness after. One of the things he really makes you do is certain meditations on looking at your mother and seeing not only the beautiful gifts that she has given you, but also what you may blame her for in terms of what she left you in her life. Then he has you do it also with your father, looking at the gifts that your father has given to you, and then also the things you blame your father for as well. And those are just 2 of the exercises for an example of what it looks like, and I'm just looking at my notes here. And as you write it out, because it's more of like a journaling, meditating kind of thing that you want to do, you start really looking at what is your core complaint, like what is the thing that consistently shows up in your life that may be passed down from your family. There's a bunch of written exercises in this book that I think is phenomenal and really gets you to the core of it all. And this really prompted me to call my parents and just talk to them and ask them questions and really learn about their history. Because there's always, I feel like every time I talk to my parents, I've done it many times, I learn something new. It's a beautiful experience, and I'm lucky and grateful that I have both of my parents alive in my life. And I know a lot of people do not have that privilege. And he talks about that in the book, on what people can do who do not have their parents in their life because they might have passed away or just not be in their life. He gives you exercises to do as well. But I don't think it ends there, because if you're someone who plans on having children and being an influential person to people that you may work with, to people you may mentor, we have to squash the pain. We have to do the inner work. There's no escaping it. As much as we try to, there's no escaping having to do that inner work. There's a sense that we must go back to the past to solve the problems of the future. That may be something that is necessary for you to move forward. And I'll give you a list on things that have worked for me, because I can only speak from experience. So one thing, I'm always reading a book. I mean, if you know me, and you know most of my posts, I usually have at least 1 or 2 book recommendations in there, because they have been extremely beneficial. They're one of the best ways to learn, I believe, because a lot of them have exercises to help you do that. Mentors, whether that's online or a physical mentor that you talk to and have a month-to-month call or whatever the case may be. I see mentors as the people I follow on YouTube, Instagram, listen to their podcasts. I feel like some semblance of their conversation is speaking straight to me. At least that's how I see it and visualize it in my head. So podcast mentors are a huge benefit in my growth. Journaling, I keep 3 journals. I have a journal where I just scribble whatever I want and kind of has prompts in it. Then I have a journal that doesn't have any lines, and it's kind of one of those where if I'm feeling creative, I can draw or do many things. And then I have a journal that's kind of just, it's called the growth journal, and it has tons of different prompts to help you write, but it's kind of free writing journals. So journals have been instrumental in the past 2 years. And I don't do them every day, but I do them when the time is right. I don't force it. Sometimes I just write a sentence. Sometimes I'm writing 3 pages. Solitude. I have a video on my channel. You can go and check it out. I'll put it somewhere here. But I have a video on the importance of solitude and taking that time away. Now, there's a difference between solitude and isolation, and I'll have a video on that in the future as well, and why that's so important, especially if you're a masculine man, on getting your energy through solitude. Not only will solitude give you energy, but it'll also help you figure things out. Whatever problems you have looming in your life, find some time in solitude without any distractions. That means no YouTube, no podcast, no music, nothing. Just you and your mind. And that may be a difficult place to get to, but once you're there, the gifts, it just keeps on giving. It's the gift that keeps on giving, as they say. It kind of ties into my next point, which is finding your inner wisdom. And the only way to do that really is to move beyond all the bushes, which I say are all the distractions that are coming left and right. So do that. And obviously talking to people smarter than you kind of ties into mentorship. But sometimes if you are in a room and people are talking and you're like, I don't know what's going on here, you're in the right room. But if you're in a room and you're like, I kind of know everything people are saying, you're in the wrong room. You need to get out of there. Wrong job, you need to get out of there. The minute you know it, you have a sense of all of it. Yes, you can have a beginner's mind, and there's that side, but I think that it requires you to move up to the next level. And finding ways to talk to your family, asking them those deep questions to really learn your history, your family history, because it's like, how does that tie in with you? Going back to the book, it didn't start with you. He also talks about that and having your family tree and seeing what happened in your past and your history. Biggest things for me, and this is extremely important, why I saved it for last, is forgiveness. It's forgiving others, but also seeking forgiveness for the things you have done, because, you know, we're not perfect. We're humans. We make mistakes. We do horrible things, as much as we talk about it or not. Now, forgiveness has been extremely instrumental in my growth. In the last 4.5, almost 5 years, I've grown immensely than my entirety of my 26 years of life, right? And I think that comes to solving a bit of my generational trauma, but also forgiving my family and those that I love. When I did that, especially with the father, and I've talked about this on a podcast, on the Ruben and Jesse podcast. If you're interested, link is below as well. I've talked about this there. For some reason, when that time happened and I was able to reconnect with my father, this lightness came into my body. Like I just felt lighter, like a weight was lifted. This darkness removed itself, and I felt more closer to who I am, like centered. Something happened to me when I did that on an energetic quantum level, if you want to call it. It's very weird and it's really hard to explain, but it's something that has followed me ever since that moment, and I'm always grateful that I was able to make that decision and make that choice and move beyond my pride and my stubbornness, which comes naturally to me, but had to open my mind and be open to that experience and be able to have my father back into my life. I gave you a ton of things that you can do to help yourself. I hope that you purchase this book. I mean, like I said, I can give you the summary, but the exercises are the most important thing in this book. If you don't even read it for the stories, at least just do the exercises to help you. And not only that, but it may bring you closer to your family, to calling them and asking them those questions. So with that, I'm ending the video here. I hope you enjoyed that. Please like this video to help the algorithms out there. comment below your thoughts. Subscribe for weekly videos every Wednesday. And with that, I won't take up any more of your time. Much love. Stay kind. Stay dangerous. Much love, y'all. Peace.